Roy, it was 40 years ago this year that you made your first appearance on the Grand Ole Opry show.
That's correct.
Can you recall what sensations or what the circumstances were, who was on the show, what you did, and so forth?
Well, sure. It's no trouble, Joe, when you're excited about something, you can always remember it. It was a very exciting night to me when I first went on the Grand Ole Opry. At that time, they had mostly what they call string bands. They were the Possum Hunters, the Fruit Jar Drinkers, the Gully Jumpers, and the Crook Brothers, and Sam and Kurt McGee, Sarah and Sally, the Delmore Brothers, and all but they were big names.
Had they all made records?
No, records? 2 or 3 of them had made recordings. Uncle Dave Macon had made some recordings, and maybe the Delmore Brothers. But no, recording in our Grand Ole Opry field was very light at that time. But all these people were on the Opry, and it was a very exciting night to me, and I was very nervous. But this particular night, I went there as a fiddler. I used to be a fairly good country fiddler, but that night I wasn't so hot. I was nervous, and my bow played too shaky and all, but I did the Great Speckled Bird that night.
Were there many singers, or was it mostly instrumental on the show?
Mostly instrumental. Right. Mostly instrumental on the Grand Ole Opry. Those that were singing on the Grand Ole Opry were crooners. That was back in the days when Bing Crosby was so popular with such a soft, beautiful voice. And everybody wanted to sing like Bing Crosby because they felt that was the way to get somewhere and to have something. And I rode back in my own good country way, just like I was when I went back in Union County, going over the hill after the cow to bring her in for milking. And that afternoon I'd always sing. I was singing all the time in the country. So I just rode back to the microphone and sung in my own natural style.
What was the reaction to the Great Speckled Bird?
Joe, you could hardly believe it. No one on the Opry had ever had such an ovation or standing ovation. And even the old-timers that were there, when I speak of old-timer, I'm speaking of Uncle Dave and all the other the people that were there, the band. They couldn't believe that a fellow could come in there and disturb the audience like I did. I more or less excited the audience. And I encored 3 or 4 times with the Great Speckled Bird. And I never will forget that my wife was there, and she was standing in the wings, and Uncle Dave was standing there, and Uncle Dave was a lovable person, but he says, well, he's new here, he won't last very long.
Well, 1938, of course, was Depression time, and radio, it preceded television. The Grand Ole Opry must have had such a loyal following throughout the South. Was it heard through the South exclusively? Was it just WSM, or were there other stations that hooked up?
I think possibly there were some other stations carrying it, Joel, but truthfully it was a cleared channel station. Right. 65 was a cleared channel station, and it was equal almost to a network, that is especially from the great Rocky Mountains to the coast of Maine, off of the coast of Florida, and down into the islands. We covered it all, and it didn't take long to become known because it was just like a network show.
Well, leading up to the Opry appearance, you were a Tennessee boy. When did you start playing the fiddle and start making music?
Well, I started when I was real young. I started learning fiddle when I was on the farm. I didn't leave the farm until I was 18 years old. But my father was a fiddler, and my uncle, and they were about the only musicians that were around Maynardville, which was a little town then of maybe about 150 people. And but everybody sang, but everybody sung like me. They reared back and sung with their depth of their lungs. They more or less like people who you hear in the symphonies sing, real strong voice.
No Bing Crosby.
No, didn't know. I had never heard about Bing, but I was just brought up and my father would buy some recordings once in a while. We was 25 miles from town, and he would bring a recording in once in a while. We'd get to hear fiddling Joe Carson or some of the old timers.
With that wind-up Victrola?
Well, wind up, and it was awful hard to find the key because the
speed.
The faster it plays, the higher the pitch goes. So you wouldn't know whether you was in A, B, C, or D. It was tough.
And did you have any idols in the music world at that point that you used to hear on the Opry or whose records you enjoyed?
Joe, I don't think that I ever had what you call or ever tried to copy any person. I didn't get to hear very much. I had there were no idols as far as the music industry was concerned. I guess I thought just as much of my father and my uncle as anybody because they were doing something that I loved to do, is play the fiddle. And I guess that they would have had to have been my idol at that time, trying to do what they were doing.
How about Jimmy Rogers? Had you ever heard of him? Did he have much of an influence on you?
Not at that time. Later years, when I moved from Maynardville to Fountain City, a suburb of Knoxville, Tennessee, I became to hear Jimmy's numbers on the Victrolas down at the corner store. And I began to like Jimmy. I liked to hear him sing. I thought he was wonderful. But I never did try to copy him. I loved his songs. I sung some of his songs, but not in any copy way at all. I was still just a Roy Acuff. I had no idea right at that time that I ever wanted to make a career of entertainment or country music.
Well, all right, now it's 1938. You've made this appearance in February in the Grand Ole Opry and obviously caused quite a stir with a great speckled bird, with an ovation and lots of mail and so forth. What then happened?
Well, the bird flew good for a while and is still one of the most requested numbers on the Opry today. But I realized that I had to come back with something to stay alive. I felt I did. So I picked up the Wabash Cannonball and the Night Train to Memphis and the Wreck on the Highway, some of those numbers. But the Wabash Cannonball, I brought it out into the front by the whistle. I created a whistle on the Wabash Cannonball that none of the others had ever done. It had been recorded before. But I think I created a listening audience waiting to hear that whistle. It wasn't the cannonball, it wasn't Roy Acuff. I think it was the whistle that they wanted to hear.
And that was, when was the Wabash Cannonball recorded? What year was that?
Well, my first recording of it was back in about 1936, before I ever came to the album. But later we recorded at different times. As we got better equipment, I tried to keep all my numbers better quality.
Well, had you made records before that Grand Ole Opry appearance?
Oh yes, so the Columbia people came through Knoxville and picked me up and took me to Chicago and recorded me. They wasn't looking for Roy Acuff though. They wanted the Great Speckled Bird. That's what they wanted.
What was Nashville like back in the late 30s and early 40s? Could you feel a buzz about music as there is now?
No, sir. No, it was just a capital city, and that was all you could say about Nashville. It was just nothing was thought about music here in this town. And truthfully, the people in Nashville were not very fond of the Grand Ole Opry.
Well, Roy, when did Nashville make the turn and become the music capital of the South and the world, country music capital?
I think that my becoming pretty popular in country music, and then helping to start the Acuff Rose publications here, I think it began to bring people into Nashville to find out what was going on in the music industry. And then later they just people started to copying what maybe I was doing, what Acuff Rose were doing, and then it just grew into many things, which today is a multi-million-dollar business in the music industry alone here.
Well, right now the term Acuff Rose is almost like a generic term people refer to without even stopping to stand back and say, wait a minute, there is an Acuff and there is a Rose. Fred Rose was your co-founder. What are your recollections about Fred?
Fred, he was just a mighty fine gentleman. I got acquainted with him when he was doing a 15-minute piano recital at WSM around noontime, and I was doing a program there too at that time.
This is back in the early 40s?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it was in the 40s. Anyway, I became to know him, and then after I had got a little money ahead, I wanted to invest in something. I thought it would be nice if we could start a music business in Nashville. There wasn't no music business south of the Mason-Dixon line that I knew of any country music, and Fred didn't receive it too quick. He wanted to investigate about it, and he did, and went to Chicago, and he talked to Mr. Forster up there and different friends of his that he'd made before he ever came to Nashville. And then when he decided that he would like to give his time to it, we went together and started the Acuff Publications.
And it has obviously grown to be a monster with such great writers as Hank Williams associated with it.
Well, when Hank met Fred Rose, he met a fellow that I think meant a lot to Hank, and I think Hank meant a lot to Fred, because they become good friends. And they had a lot in common. They could both write songs. I think Hank maybe come up with a lot of the ideas, being a country boy from down in Alabama, and I knew him well before he came in here. In fact, helped him to come into Nashville. And then when he would talk about these things, Fred was real quick to pick up the idea. You know, Fred even wrote songs for Gene Autry out on the West, Songs of the West, and I doubt if he had ever laid foot on Western soil at that time, because he was out of Chicago. And then he went to out west and started writing songs for Gene to sing in his pictures and on recordings too.
What are your recollections of Hank Williams? What kind of individual was he?
Joe, I always thought a lot of Hank Williams, and I don't really like the stories that they've all told on him. I think some of them have been very unfair to the gentleman. He's meant a lot to our business. He left a lot for us. I'm only regretful that part of his life was very sad at the very last, and his last days, and I think it was caused maybe through marriage, court affairs, and different things of that nature. But as a boy, as a young man, and as a songwriter, they just wasn't any finer people around. I used to go to Alabama. I'd go down there and play, and he'd always come to my shows. And then I would go out with him to play his little honky-tonks that he was playing down there. I'd go out at night with he and Audrey. And he wouldn't more hit the stage till he was playing Roy Acuff. He was copied me, you know. He'd take my fiddle and he'd turn loose on the wreck on the highway and just dial. He liked to do my numbers. And he did do my numbers when he came here until he recorded the Lovesick Blues, and I think it was the Lovesick Blues, I'm quite sure I am. And Fred told him, said, "No more Roy Acuff. Let's be a Hank Williams." And that gave Hank his determination to be a Hank Williams, and he did make his own name.
Well, country music, because of the Opry, and because generally over the last 20, 30 years people have lived in this area, like jazz music, has a great community of musicians. And so you've been rather friendly and grown up with people like Ernest Tubb and Tex Ritter and some others, I assume, haven't you?
Certainly, yes.
What are your recollections of Tex Ritter?
Tex was a real fine man. His character and all was good. He was good for the business. To be around Tex Ritter and know him in his slow Texas drawl that he used, and that if he can drawl more than I can, well, they're getting pretty drolly. But Tex was a real gentleman to be around, and I worked with him in a picture called the Cowboy Canteen, and that's where I became acquainted with him before he came in here. But I was pleased that he did come in and get interested in country music, because he was doing it was Western songs when he was riding on the range out in the cowboy outfit. But when he came in here, I think he played a big part in helping country music because of the character, the type of gentleman that he was.
Roy, what was it like on the road during those days? You people used to play an enormous amount of in-person appearances, didn't you?
Yes. Joe, I doubt seriously if any of the boys and girls today that are doing so well in country music, if they would have had to have gone through the tortures and the pains and the hardships that I've gone through with, I doubt very seriously many of them would have stayed. Some of them would. You had to have a background of football and basketball and baseball with determination to win. You had to be taught to win. And I was taught to win when I was a young man and took up athletics. I was taught to win, but to be a good loser. But I had to work hard, and I worked hard. And when I came here, I knew I was coming here to work. And it was many a week that I went without taking my socks off of my feet.
And traveling, was it by bus?
No, we didn't have no bus. We traveled by Fords. I kept 2 Fords, one right after the other, and I did pull a trailer in with a Chrysler automobile at one time, and then we'd put all of our instruments, things on top of the thing. We looked like a bunch of gypsies going down the road.
And what did you play? School halls and
played ours mostly. When I first started here, I played grammar schools and a few high schools, and just very small places was all we could play. And our admission prices was only 15, 25 cents in schools.
I can imagine what accommodations were like on the road, too.
Yeah, and you can imagine what we were doing. And I promised my boys $22.50 a week if they had to stay with me, and I always paid them $25, and I went home without almost anything. And my first $100 house was after I'd been here maybe a year, and about 30 miles out of here, at Murfreesboro at McFadden School, I saw $100. That's the biggest thing I'd ever seen.
When's the last time you went out on any kind of concert tour here in the States?
My last time.
Have you been out with a band with the Smoky Mountain Boys or anybody in the last 5 or 10 years?
Well, up until I had the heart attack, I went out with some of the groups and played auditoriums as I had been. But it's been some time now since I played.
Was when you traveled, did you do local radio shows? Was that
At first.
Yeah.
When we first started, we wouldn't pass up a radio station. We'd stop by and visit with all of them to try to become known. We had to build from the very bottom. It wasn't an overnight proposition. It took several years to really become to where we were being known.
Were there disc jockeys as we know disc jockeys today?
Oh yes, yeah. They each. If the disc jockey wasn't there, the manager of the radio station was there, and usually was the manager that did the interviewing, because they didn't have they wasn't prepared like they are today to they wasn't making the money like other people were. They were just little stations, and they were just serving the people. That's all.
Did television never play much of a part in your career?
No, not a big part. I don't think television has been anything that has built Roy Acuff, except maybe for more people to know me on sight. I used to, when I was on radio, I could walk into a barber shop or a grocery store or anybody else, and they would say, "Aren't you Roy Acuff? You sound like him." Today, when I walk in and look, they will say, "Oh, I saw you. I've seen you on television, haven't I?" It's something of that nature. Or a lot of people will still walk up and say, "Don't I know you? Are you Roy Acuff? You sound like him." So they learn to know you by the sound of your voice back then.
How about your motion picture career? Did you ever make a real run at an Academy Award?
No, Lord, no, Joe. There wasn't no Academy Awards back when I made pictures. It was just going out to Hollywood and working real hard, try to make a picture, and I did 8 pictures, and I did 1 or 2 real good ones. The Night Train to Memphis, I think, was a very good picture, And that is how some people got to know me on sight, was through the motion picture industry back years ago, before television ever came in.
Was that fun making movies? Right.
Well, in a way it was, but in another way it was a lot of trouble, a lot of bother, because I was a country boy and I didn't know how to take when they'd holler cut. Well, I would be disturbed. What went wrong? And they'd say, well, nothing exactly. We got to move the camera over here and we got to take it from another angle. And then you have to do the same thing over. And they holler, okay, cut. And then you go over to another angle, do it in 3 or 4 different angles. They'd have to do it for you. It's not like television today, or not like I'm sure motion pictures are today at all. It was just very aggravating, and I'd go get into makeup around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd stay till 10 o'clock that night, and maybe never go in front of the camera all day long, and it got very disgusting for a country boy.
Talking about the country boy, the levels and borders for country music have spread now beyond the United States. It's truly an art form that originated in this country, but you've had some success now other than the United States, haven't you?
Well, I hope I've been pretty successful in some of the other countries, the English-speaking countries, where the recordings are listened to. Country music has grown into the European part of the world and over into Australia. I was in Australia for 2 months and did 39 television shows for them over there several years ago. And South Africa, I've been down in there. All these countries that are English-speaking people, I think they're beginning to realize that country music is easy and good to listen to.
Well, England especially, the United Kingdom, you've appeared at the Wembley Festival, is that
Yes,
it?
I've been there, and it's a big thing for them over there. This Mr. Khan, I believe it's about Easter time when he takes the group over, and they have been very successful over there in their crowds. They've had big crowds.
Roy, do you listen to country music now?
Do what?
Do you listen to country music, some of the new records that are being made?
Do I listen to it? Well, I do sometimes. I listen, especially I listen to our Grand Ole Opry to see what the boys and girls are singing there more than I do anywhere else, because not too many of them now. We did have a station or two here in Nashville that played country music, but now they call it a contemporary music and of that nature, and I'm not. It's really not down my alley that I'm used to. I'm used to real country music, and that's the better way I can listen to it and understand it better.
Is there anybody that's come along in the last 5 or 6 years that's impressed you, that plays the kind of music that you enjoy?
Oh yes, there's several of the boys and girls that sing beautiful country music, and I'm very fond of them. I just couldn't name you all of them, but Don Gibson sings good country music, and we have Del Reeves, and we have some of the girls out on the Opry, Jeannie Shepherd and Jeannie Pruitt, and many of those girls. They all sing good country songs. There's a lot of them sing good country songs. Ernest Tubb still sings the same country western songs that he sang. Of course, he plays more in the western bands through Texas. And Hank Snow and Marty Robbins. Marty sings beautiful country songs, and there are a lot of them that are very successful in singing just plain country music.
Ernest Tubb was an old associate of yours too?
Oh yes, I've known Ernest since he came to the Opry. He came here about 5 years after I did, and he was walking the floor over you, and he's still walking it and doing good with it.
How about Red Foley?
I loved him. I thought he had a beautiful voice, one of the most beautiful voices in country music. I was much grieved when we lost Red Foley. We lost a wonderful artist.
And Jim Reeves is another.
Jim Reeves was another one, yes. Jim, and of course, those are boys that are passed on. I was trying to think of the present when I was thinking. But, of course, Hank Williams did a beautiful job with country music. We got a boy on the West Coast, Tennessee Ernie Ford, that when he wants to sing beautiful gospel songs and country music, he can sing. He got a beautiful voice. He and Red Foley have really top voices in our music. George Morgan sung beautiful songs.
How did you feel about artists like Elvis Presley?
Well, I liked Elvis. Elvis was went into a different field from what we boys were in. He was in the rock group, and I never did. I tell you what turned me off of the rock group, Joe, was when they first started. They were kind of vulgar. They were more vulgar at that time. They thought they just had to get down on the floor and waller in it and turn over and get down with their microphones and all. And it was disgusting to watch them perform. But now, today, they don't do that. They may swivel the hip a little bit like Elvis, but they're quite a different group. They're loud. I don't care for the loudness, but some of those boys are good artists. I watched them on different television shows, and I must say that I enjoy them. But I don't like them when they get too loud and when they get off color with their songs.
Is it amazing to you to see what's happened to the record industry and the music industry in this country and around the world in the last 10 years, how big it's become?
Yes, I never dreamed it. I never thought that the industry here in Nashville would ever be big like it is. And when the rock groups came in, the only way that they hurt country music was in the recording field. The young children started to buying the records instead of Mom and Papa. And of course I was kind of left out in that. I was in the category of country music, and while Elvis and them were selling big, I took quite a drop off in recordings, but not in personal appearances. It didn't hurt my personal appearances at all. But and it never hurt Grand Ole Opry, but it did hurt the recording industry, and people went to the rock music, and it was such a big thing for a while. But I think it's dropped off now. It's just another music, and of course Elvis will live on and on for a long time.
How about your own personal life? You're quite a collector of a number of things, aren't you? You're very varied in your taste with painted ties and miniature instruments or musical instruments and miniature liquor bottles. Are you still a collector?
Well, to a certain extent. I don't collect some things like I did. I was a fellow that if I saw something odd, I'd try to get hold of it, something unusual. I made a wonderful collection of miniatures of liquor bottles, and I still have them. I have over 2,200 of them of different kind. I don't collect them anymore, but I have them stored away. And I bought some collections from back in the 20s, and I have a lot of those things that are beautiful. And my wife and I had a collection of dolls. And we, of course, when we couldn't move them to Opryland, we got rid of the dolls. But I have a gun collection that I'm very fond of. I started to find different gauges of guns, and a little different from what other people do. And I still have it. It's stored away. A very fine collection of guns, and my best collection is of musical instruments. I have a collection of musical instruments that I don't believe that there's another one will equal it anywhere in the world, because it's just such a wide collection of all kinds of unusual instruments. And then I made a collection of the Gibson instruments and a collection of the Martin instruments, and they are very expensive. And I have a lot of instruments that I don't think that even the companies have know too much about them anymore.
Roy, it's been 50 years close to it in the music business for you.
Yes.
Any things you'd have done differently Any things that you thought at a certain point in your career you might have taken a different angle?
No, I've been very happy, Joe, in what I've done. I've been, as far as my career back when I was in my heyday, let's put it that way, I climbed to pretty well the top of the ladder, and I was very happy. I have stayed up through the years, not at the top, don't misunderstand me, but I have stayed up to where my name is in front of the public. And I don't think anyone has kept their name in front of the public longer than Roy Acuff has. And I've been very happy. If I was to do any other, at my age now, I sometimes think of how well I would have liked to have maybe, pardon me, have gotten into the gospel group. I love to sing gospel songs, not just of my age, not looking forward to another world. I just like to sing. I love gospel music. And I mentioned to Wes Rose here a while back that if it becomes to a point of where I can't stay into the country field and be successful like I've been, there's one other field that I would have liked to have tried other than that, and that would have been the New Orleans jazz. I just somehow another love that type of music, but I love all music. I love symphony music. I love it all, as long as it's beautiful music.
This package that we're talking about, this Roy Acuff record album, have you ever had any greatest hits kind of 2-volume affair like this before that's put it all out in one place?
Not that I know of, yeah. Joe, no. It's just been a release of, for a long, long time, they would only release singles, and then they got to releasing albums, and then it'd just be one album maybe after another, and double back. But I've never had a real package put together.
Any songs of these particular favorites? Was there anything that you enjoyed singing more than anything else?
No, I enjoy all of them. I enjoy all the songs. I enjoy songs that have a feeling, understanding, some lack of a meaning. I don't enjoy singing songs that doesn't have any feeling in me. I like to sing something there's something in me that I want to put out and let the other person know. I don't just enjoy singing any type of a song. I enjoy singing something that's has some kind of feeling about it or understanding. I like to see an audience. I have watched my audience cry, and I try to make them cry. But then I want to make them laugh right after, because when I'm performing on stage, I will do a song that'll make a person cry, and I'll quickly come back with something to make him laugh.
Roy, you appear to be active and in good health. What are you doing now, and what's in the future for you?
I fool most of my time around Opryland. I spend a lot of time out there. I still go over and on one of the little shows, maybe find one of the shows, and I'll introduce the show, any of them, and get up and sing a song or two and walk off and sign some autographs and get out of the park right quick during the daytime. Then I go over around my music hall in the late afternoon, and I'll sit around there maybe 45 minutes, an hour, and sign autographs, meet people from all over the whole world, and sign autographs and take pictures.
Are the Smoky Mountain Boys still a unit?
Yes, yeah, and we work the Opry together, and we do a personal appearance once in a while on a package show. Not too many though, 3 or 4 a year maybe, just to let them know that we're still together and that I'm still in good health.
You've met a lot of important and exciting people over the years. Any that you?
Yes, I've met a lot of very interesting people. Not only in the entertainment world, I've met a lot of them. I had the pleasure of meeting Bing Crosby before Bing left, and I have met Bob Hope on 2 or 3 different occasions, and when I was working overseas and I met a lot of generals and colonels, and I don't guess any of the boys worked any more overseas dates than I did. I went over The Christmases, I didn't spend a Christmas at home for several years. And of course, I had the pleasure of introducing President Nixon to the world, and that's quite an honor for a little country boy like me. And I was invited to the White House to play for the prisoners of war, and many things of that nature that's come into my life. It's made my life worth living and a lot of happiness.
You even took a fling at running for public office yourself, didn't you, many years ago?
Well, I kind of believe, Joe, that I was more or less pushed or invited into that more than my own desire. But I finally accepted it because after, see, that time the governor's office was only 2 years. And every 2 years the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both would be wanting me to run. And I turned them all down for 2 or 3 different times. And finally I was on the coast working in a picture. And I got a telegram from the Republican Party, asked me if they would allow my name to go on the, if I would allow my name to go on the primary ballot. And I said, without making one speech, if you want to put it on there, the people ask me, invite me to make the race, I'll make the general race. And a very nice gentleman made the race against me. He was a lawyer from out down in West Tennessee. And I had the pleasure of meeting him, and he introduced me around in the general election. And he was no competition at all. I made not one speech and was elected by a big majority.
And
I had a lot of friends.
It certainly did nothing to impair your musical career.
Not at all. Not at all. I stayed on the Opry. They tried to make me quit the Opry. They you know, it's time for this one, you do this and that. But the management of the Opry says if Roy doesn't mention anything about his campaign, he's not going to leave the Opry. He's going to stay on. They stayed behind me, and I carried right on and never mentioned nothing about it. And then I'd go out and make the political speeches later.
Roy, if there's one man synonymous with country music, its best side, and as we know it now, it's Roy Acuff. 50 years and still going and still making appearances. It's a pleasure to know you and a pleasure to have you associated with us with this record. And we're looking for continued marvelous things to come out of Roy Acuff.
Joe, you're a real fine gentleman, and I've certainly enjoyed my talking to you here. And I want to thank you for coming all the way from the West Coast to Nashville to visit with what some people would call an old man. But I'm still young at heart, and I have a lot of days left in me, and I intend to continue to do country music and to do everything I can to keep country music on a high level. And I hope that the folks that hear these records that's put out by the Elektra people, and I know that you're with one of the biggest companies. If it wasn't a big company like you are, I think I'd rather just say let's forget it. But I know you with a big company, and I'll be proud of anything that I can do.
Well, a pleasure, Roy Acuff. You've accomplished so much, and there's so much for country music to thank you for over the years, and we appreciate you being with us.
It's been a lot of fun.